And tomorrow, the window opens for Alabama's first scheduled execution of the year. Jeremy Williams is scheduled to die by lethal injection for the 2021 rape and murder of 5-year-old K-Marie Holland. And Alabama won't be alone. 3 states are preparing to carry out executions on the same day. And this is something that hasn't happened in the U.S. in nearly 16 years. Now, supporters say the death penalty delivers justice to victims. Critics argue the system is becoming increasingly difficult to defend. Tonight, I continue my investigative series into executions in Alabama with an in-depth look at the system and if it's working the way it was intended.
In the past few years, Americans have really turned away from use of the death penalty, and we can see that in the level of public support for the death penalty, which is at its lowest level in 5 decades, and also in the number of new death sentences, which is at an all-time low. In fact, we've been tracking how juries are making sentencing decisions, and our data show that juries more often impose a life sentence than a death sentence.
Robin Mayer leads the Death Penalty Information Center, a national organization that tracks capital punishment across the country. She says while executions continue, the use of the death penalty is changing.
All of the capital juries have chosen a life sentence for people charged with those offenses. And there have been no executions in Alabama this year, and that's very different from years in the past, but it is showing a continuation of the national trend that we're seeing among all capital juries.
Alabama also found itself at the center of a national conversation after becoming the first state to carry out executions using nitrogen hypoxia. Supporters have called it a constitutional method of execution. Critics say questions remain about whether it causes unnecessary suffering.
Well, nitrogen gas had never been used before until Alabama began using it to execute prisoners. And this was a completely untested, unproven method of execution. Now, some people might ask, why does that matter? We're killing someone because of a crime they've committed against someone else. Why does it matter how they die? But our Constitution provides for protections and rights even for people who've been convicted of committing terrible crimes. And one of those protections is the protection against cruel and unusual punishment.
State leaders have continued to defend capital punishment. This year, Governor Kay Ivey signed the Child Predator Death Penalty Act, saying Alabama should impose the harshest penalty possible for the most egregious crimes against children. At the same time, the governor also took the rare step of commuting the death sentence of Charles Sonny Burton, saying she could not, in good conscience, allow one man to be executed when the actual shooter received life in prison. Attorney General Steve Marshall strongly disagreed, saying Burton's sentence had been upheld for decades and vowing his office would continue seeking death sentences in the state's most serious murder cases. Overall, Mayer says whether for or against the death penalty, there is a need for more transparency.
The public does not know what's happening, and that's by design. Alabama officials have taken care to ensure that none of the information about how they are killing people, how much money they are investing in this process, and all of their decision making has been disclosed to the public. Now, some people might say, who cares? I don't need to know those details. But these are government officials using taxpayer dollars, and this is a government function. And in a democracy like ours, taxpayers have a right to understand what their elected officials are doing and how they're spending their money.
Mayer pointing to questions about execution procedures, how cases are reviewed, and whether the public has enough information to evaluate a system that carries the ultimate punishment.
Well, accuracy and reliability is one of the most important things about a public policy. And what we have found from the data is that we often get it wrong. We know at least 202 people have been exonerated from death row, people that were convicted and sentenced to death wrongly, but we don't know how many more were convicted and executed before their innocence was discovered. And there's all kinds of reasons for that, chiefly among them, the lack of good defense counsel.
Supporters of the death penalty argue capital punishment provides justice for victims, while opponents say the possibility of even one wrongful execution demands caution. The debate continues to play out in courtrooms, the State House, and inside Alabama's death chamber. And tomorrow, the process before an inmate ever reaches an execution chamber. Who decides whether a case could end in death? We go inside a district attorney's office for a conversation few viewers ever get to see. And you can find the first two stories in this exclusive series on executions in Alabama right now on the ABC 3340 YouTube page. Yesterday, I did speak with a pastor who stands with condemned inmates at the end. And Monday night, I took you inside Alabama's death penalty and how it changed capital punishment in America.